This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Well, here we go again. Our early brush with winter weather continues today with more snow alerts in the lake belts. 4 to 8 inches of snow possible south and east of Lakes Erie and Ontario, and a messy mix of wintry precip for everyone else. That snow will mix with rain and ice at times today, causing slick conditions on the highways. Tonight, watch out for wind-blown snow, accumulating several more inches downwind of the Great Lakes. The deep freeze returns tomorrow. If you're headed home for the holidays, you are not alone.
AAA is expecting more than 122 million Americans to travel at least 50 miles or more over the 13-day year-end holiday travel period, starting December 20th, running through January 1st, New Year's Day. This year's forecast up 2.2% over 2024. That would be a new record.
Aviation consultant Chris Van Cleve. President Trump hosted a campaign-like rally last night in Battleground, Pennsylvania. He blamed his predecessor for the economic malaise that many of you are feeling right now. The commander-in-chief vowed to make America affordable again.
You're getting lower prices, bigger paychecks. We're getting inflation. We're crushing it.
Experts say while gas prices are down, grocery costs remain stubbornly high. We'll highlight more of the president's sales pitch in Pennsylvania later in the broadcast. The Federal Reserve expected to cut interest rates for a third straight time today. Most analysts predicting a quarter-point cut in the overnight borrowing rate. That would lower the interest rate you pay on things like auto loans and home mortgages to around 3.5%. For many of us, home ownership is a pipe dream, not the American dream. A survey by Bankrate.com shows more than 75% of homes today are unaffordable for the average household.
There is a deficit of 4.7 million homes, and it's a supply and demand issue, and this shortage is what is driving the affordability crisis.
Megan Cirillo with Money Watch says the median price for an existing home is north of $400,000. The average age for a first-time home buyer is 40. Australia is going anti-social. The land down under's become the first major country to ban social media for teenagers. Big tech companies face millions in fines if they violate the ban. 15-year-old Aussie Noah Jones is taking legal action, saying this ban suppresses free speech.
We as a whole will have our constitutional right taken away from us, and we will also be invisible with this ban.
Australia's Prime Minister says the ban gives kids their childhood back. A recent YouGov survey shows nearly 8 in 10 Aussies support the crackdown on the growing influence that social media has on children. The Trump administration's revoked the visas of 85,000 immigrants in a sweeping crackdown targeting safety threats. This includes more than 8,000 student visas. Former State Department official Martha Miller.
Visas are not a right given to foreign nationals. It is a privilege that is granted by the U.S. Department of State, and the State Department does have broad authorities to curb, revoke, deny those visa requests.
In addition, the State Department's announced a new visa restriction policy in response to the wave of brutal anti-Christian attacks in Nigeria. One person is dead, another critically wounded after a shooting at Kentucky State University, an historically black school about 2 miles east from the Capitol in Frankfurt. The suspect taken into custody last night. He is not a student at that school. Miami has elected its first Democratic mayor in almost 30 years. Eileen Higgins will also be the first woman to hold the job of mayor of Miami. She beat a Trump-backed candidate last night in a runoff election. Is this a sign of of things to come in 2026? Conservative podcaster Hannah Cox.
The economy has not turned around in the ways that people were hoping it would under Trump. I think that's really going to be the largest determinant right now. We're still feeling the effects of the tariffs. We haven't really gotten the relief at the working class and middle class levels that people are hoping for. If that turns around by next year, then I don't think Republicans are going to have that much to worry about. But I also think if we continue to see the same economic outcomes that we're currently living with, then we could see some big losses.
Last night's mayoral contest in Miami was one of the last big political battles before next year's midterms. With their star quarterback injured, the NFL's Indianapolis Colts are going back in time to find a replacement. The Colts are bringing out of retirement 44-year-old Philip Rivers for a workout. He last played in the NFL in 2020.
He was just named a semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame because he's now eligible, because he's been retired for 5 years.
NFL analyst Jonathan Jones.
He apparently feels good enough to go to Indianapolis to visit with the team because he's not going to embarrass himself, right? He has to pass a physical.
For the past 5 years, Philip Rivers has been coaching high school football in Fairhope, Alabama. Still to come on the Noon Report, a midweek edition. Good news when it comes to gun violence in New York. Penn State profs want to unionize, and cannabis cultivation at Elmira College.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking snow and rain and more winter weather ahead. Forecasted towns are coming up. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. In the meantime, let's check the stories making news where you live, all across New York and Pennsylvania.
I just want to say hello, Pennsylvania, and I'm thrilled to be back.
President Trump promising to tackle America's affordability crisis at a speech last night at the Mount Airy Casino in Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains. He pointed to gas prices as one of the ways in which Americans are saving right now.
Just reported that 4 states had $1.99 a gallon.
Mr. Trump told the crowd he inherited record high inflation from the Biden administration, and he's vowed to make America affordable again. New York Governor Kathy Hochul says gun violence is down dramatically in the Empire State. She cites studies that show a more than 60% reduction in shootings since 2021.
We've been tracking this data a long time, the lowest number of shootings in the state of New York on record. And with only 3 weeks left in 2025, we're on our way to shattering last year's record.
The governor credits the GIVE initiative for the decrease in gun-related crimes. The GIVE program provides $36 million to beef up local policing efforts. Prison reform legislation is now on the desk of Governor Hochul. It was sent to her on the 1-year anniversary of the death of inmate Robert Brooks at the Marcy Correctional Facility near Utica. 10 officers were charged in that heinous crime. 4 have been adjudicated. The debate over prison reform comes as corrections officers clamor for more protections for them inside prison walls. New York's Attorney General Tish James is being sued for threatening to remove school board members who question pro-transgender policies. This would include policies that permit biological boys in girls' sports. Critics say New York deserves an attorney general
who's a real prosecutor, who's focused on New York and focused on safety. Instead, what we have now is Letitia James, who's none of those things.
Former Assistant U.S. Attorney Saritha Kumareddy is challenging James in next year's midterms. She argues the AG has lost focus of what her job is.
In the 6 years that Letitia James has been in office, crime in New York State is up 26%. Drug deaths are up 63%. That is what is unacceptable.
Tish James recently issued a guidance letter that warned removal of any school board member who uses the wrong pronoun for a transgender student. She also has banned students from speaking out at school board meetings about their concerns with trans athletes using girls' restrooms or locker rooms. The Pennsylvania Senate Education Committee has just voted to enact a bell-to-bell smartphone ban in public schools, and that vote was unanimous. unanimous. The measure now heads to the full Senate for consideration and would also need adoption in the state House before becoming law. The bill mandates public schools adopt some form of a phone policy that bans the use of digital devices during the school day. Schools in PA would have flexibility in how that ban would be enforced. It's the biggest ever public sector union election in Pennsylvania history. Next year, Penn State University faculty plan to vote on whether to unionize. Union boss Steve Cantonese says professors deserve a stronger voice when it comes to decisions that impact their jobs.
To bring transparency to their workplace, to bring job security to their workplace, to have the opportunity to have a greater voice at their workplace, to have some economic security at their workplace. And when major decisions happen, be it closures of campuses or massive system-wide buyouts, those workers should have a voice.
That vote to unionize would cover about 6,000 faculty members at all of Penn State University's 13 campuses. Beginning in January, Elmira College in New York's Southern Tier will offer online degrees to students who pursue careers in the legal cannabis industry. The school's partnering with a company called Green Flower. The program focuses on everything from cannabis cultivation to sales to careers in the medical marijuana industry. An apartment fire on Oriskany Road in Rome, New York has killed one person and critically injured another. The Red Cross is assisting over 20 people impacted by this blaze at Countryside Apartments. Spokesperson Lisa Smith says a shelter's been set up at St. Peter's Church in the city of Rome.
We will take care of them. We're going to give them a safe place. You know, we've got some children here. We've got some pets as well. So we have food and clothing and, cots and blankets, and we'll make sure they're warm and fed, as we assess and move forward.
Firefighters say single-digit temperatures early Tuesday added to the misery of trying to douse those flames. The cause of the fire remains under investigation. 5 years ago, 4 people were killed in a house fire just down the road from that now gutted apartment in Rome, New York. A post office is one step closer to being renamed in honor of a fallen Rochester, New York police officer. The House of Representatives has passed a bill to rename the post office on Prospect Avenue in Avon in memory of Officer Anthony Mazurkiewicz. He was killed in the line of duty in 2022. Mazurkiewicz grew up in Avon and has family still in that area. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation is letting the public choose the best decorated snowplow blades for its annual student art competition. More in this report from Family Life's Brian Query.
Voting is now open for PennDOT's Paint the Plow program, a statewide initiative that promotes safe winter driving while showcasing artwork from Pennsylvania high school students. This year, students from 26 schools across 3 districts painted snowplow blades with the theme, "Don't Race, Allow Some Space." The message encourages drivers to keep a safe distance from plows and other vehicles during winter weather. You can view the designs and vote on PennDOT's website through December 14th. Each district will crown a fan favorite, and PennDOT staff will select a separate judges pick, with winners to be announced later this month. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you very much, Brian. Still to come on the Noon Report, a midweek edition. FedEx on interest rates. All eyes on Australia and Christmas travel forecast.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. In that striking scene in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge asked the 2 men who are raising money for the poor, "Are there no prisons? And the union workhouses, are they still in operation?" When the charity supporters replied that many would rather die than go to such places, Scrooge replied, if they'd rather die, they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Later in the story, Scrooge is reminded of his dehumanizing words and is ashamed. Well, recently, in real-life Britain, Lord Falconer of Thoroton suggested to the British House of Lords that the poor might be better off dead. Quote, where the reason that you want an assisted death is because in your mind you are influenced by your circumstances, for example, because you are poor, should you be barred from having an assisted death because of your poverty? In my view, not. Now, of course, in Britain's nationalized healthcare system, the cost of the procedure for the poor is not at issue. Rather, Lord Falconer seems to be suggesting that the poor should have the right to die if they're ashamed of being poor. Poverty, in his view, is a fate worse than death. Now, most likely, Lord Falconer thinks that his appeal is one to charity, like the charity workers of the Christmas Carol. But in reality, his advice is indistinguishable from Scrooge. He might as well have asked, are there no euthanasia clinics? And the gas chambers, are they still in operation? If they would rather die than be poor, then they'd better do it. Now, Lord Falconer is not suggesting, at least not yet, that the state should round up the poor for suicide pods, though suicide pods are a real thing. He is suggesting that being poor should be added to an ever-growing list of things that make life not worth living. A few years ago, when advocates argued for death in Canada and Colorado, they argued that this was a compassionate choice for those with terminal, painful, physical disease and would die shortly from them. Why prolong their suffering? But there is no slope more slippery than this one. In both Canada and Colorado, what gets someone approved for death these days has certainly expanded. In Colorado, severe eating disorders qualify. In Holland, an early adopter nation of assisted death, euthanasia has been extended to sick children. In 2022, a Belgian woman who survived a terrorist attack was put to death to save her from her PTSD. Ironically, the terrorists were not killed for their crimes and for giving her PTSD. In Canada, so-called medical assistance in dying, or MAID, is now the fifth leading cause of death. In 2016, the Canadian government argued and insisted that only those who faced imminent death would be eligible. But by 2023, this grew to include patients struggling with mental illness and drug addiction. Last year, a Canadian man complained that his PTSD would not qualify him to take advantage of death. But in another case, just a few weeks later, a young woman was granted the right to die for autism. The judge ruled that not providing MAID in her case would cause, and I quote, irreparable harm, as if death is not irreparable harm. What other trials of life will now be deemed to be suffering? A bad breakup, not getting a wanted job just because? We once condemned Nazis for who and why they killed. Now we've adopted their rhetoric. Every person is made in the image of God and has infinite dignity and worth, not just the healthy, not just the wealthy. Human value is not lessened by pain, disease, or, Lord Falconer, by poverty. The church's task in this moment is quite clear. We must affirm life. We must defend the vulnerable. We have to reject, in all ways, utilitarian thinking about human value. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Dr. Timothy Paget. And for a version of today's commentary to download and share with others, go to colsoncenter.org/radio.
Thank you, John. Outside we go. Meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast for this afternoon. Cloudy with snow and rain, a wet snow, but some additional accumulations in the high ground of northwest Pennsylvania and in central New York. Little to nothing elsewhere. Temperatures peaking in the 30s and near 40 with a breeze. Tonight and tomorrow, blustery, much colder, variable cloudiness, flurries, and wind-blown lake snow. Several inches will accumulate in the snowbelt areas east and southeast of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, just according to an inch elsewhere. Low temperatures tonight, teens and low 20s. High temperatures tomorrow, 20s to near 30.
All right, thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm your host, Bob Price. Here's what's happening Wednesday, December 10th. All eyes on Australia. The land down under's the first country to ban social media for teenagers. Correspondent Keir Simmons.
1 million social media accounts have been deactivated across Australia.
Hi there, students. It's the Prime Minister here. If you're under 16, you're no longer allowed to have a social media account.
It's the world's first nationwide ban, driven by fears about the impact on children's mental health. Studies have shown the effects of social media on kids, increased risk of depression or even self-harm, creating body image issues, addiction, and even impacting brain development.
Your money next. The Federal Reserve expected to cut interest rates again today. Business analyst Christine Roman says it's a fine line the Fed must walk in providing a much-needed jolt to the economy.
It has to be careful because if you start cutting rates, you could fan inflation again. So that is the tightrope that the Fed is walking, but we do expect maybe a quarter-point rate cut today. And that would mean lower borrowing costs on mortgages, on car loans, and a lot of things that American households use.
Expect that decision after 2 o'clock today. President Trump hosted a massive rally in Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains last night. He tried to ease concerns about rising prices amid growing angst over the affordability crisis.
I have no higher priority than making America affordable again.
The president blamed his predecessor for the higher prices that many of you are paying right now.
Shoppers say they're feeling the pinch in the checkout line.
My husband loves cauliflower. That's his favorite thing, but he can't get it. It's $4.99 a pound.
In an interview released Tuesday, the president gave himself a rosier assessment.
I wonder what grade you would give
A plus.
A plus.
Yeah, A plus.
That's CBS's Ed O'Keefe. Record travel expected for Christmas and New Year's this year. 122 million of us will hit the roads, rails, and skies during the last 2 weeks of 2025.
The AAA does expect an over 2% bump in travelers this year. 109 million people expected to travel by car, understandably so, because gas prices are below $3 a gallon in terms of the national average. Now, I want you to mark this on your calendar. The worst days to travel are going to be the Saturday, Sunday, right before Christmas, as well as the Friday after Christmas. That is going to be a bad day. The best times to travel are going to be on Christmas Day itself, as well as on New Year's Day. When it comes to flying, over 8 million people are expected to hit the TSA lines, according to the AAA. That would be the first time we've seen them cross that 8 million mark. And I should also note that ticket prices, they're up about 7% compared to last year.
NBC News business analyst Brian Chung. President Trump not ruling out putting boots on the ground in Venezuela.
President Trump tells Politico he wouldn't comment publicly one way or the other on the possibility of sending troops into Venezuela. Trump also said that the days are numbered for President Nicolas Maduro's reign in Venezuela. Tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela escalated since the Trump administration began conducting military strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. I'm Rory O'Neill.
U.S. senators delved into the difficult issue of sextortion during a Capitol Hill hearing yesterday. Alabama Republican Katie Britt.
As a mom, you work so diligently to keep your children safe. And used to, you would get them home at night and you would lock the doors and you'd be able to kind of exhale. And now the enemy is inside our home.
The FBI's referred to sextortion as modern-day terrorism that targets young children.
This is a nightmarish crime for any parent with a teenager in the house. It is insidious because they're all touching the internet and there are bad actors on that internet doing bad things.
Former Assistant FBI Director Chris Swecker says these bad actors typically come from overseas and pretend to be young girls interested in teenage boys. The hook they use to commit their crimes is the exchange of explicit images online, and that's when things start to go south fast.
Then it turns into an extortion that happens very quickly. They create a sense of panic. There have been over 30 suicides over this, and the FBI has had over 13,000 reports of sextortion.
Swecker says parents need to educate their children about how sextortion works and how to protect themselves from the deep, dark web. A woman gave birth in a self-driving car yesterday in San Francisco. The vehicle belonged to Waymo, which alerted 911 when they heard the news. When paramedics arrived, the self-driving car had already driven that woman and her newborn baby to the hospital. Both mom and baby are doing just fine. You're listening to the Noon Report, a midweek edition on Family Life.
Managing your nostalgia, taking control of your possessions so they don't control you. Welcome back to another edition of Real Answers, a regular Wednesday feature during the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Welcome back, Chris.
Good to be here, and what a timely topic.
Bill Carpenter's song about having an old-fashioned Christmas. It seems the older we get, the more Christmas becomes intertwined with memories of how Christmas used to be. And I guess we all get haunted by the ghosts of Christmas past, which sounds innocent enough, I guess. But if you dive in too deep into that pool, there could be some hazards, especially if you get wrapped up in the gift wrap, so to speak.
Well, you know what? I mean, we could say, all right, raise your hand out there in radio land if you've ever said, I just have to simplify it. I can't let this year be like last year, or in how many countless years before, where we get caught up in just all the stuff. And like you just got done saying, Mark, we've got years of accumulated stuff, memories, but things that ultimately we have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with all this stuff,
Indeed. It's almost like that ball of snow going downhill. It can kind of, as it goes on over the years, it just gets thicker and thicker. Let's dive in a little deeper here, talking about maybe the dynamics that lie behind the difficulty in, say, throwing things away, working to keep your mind focused where it ought to be this time of year.
Sure. And, that's just it. It's not even necessarily just, throwing things away, but maybe giving things away too, or understand what this really means. You're not disposing of or dishonoring the other person themselves, especially if they've passed away. These are items that maybe did belong to that person, but you are literally not throwing this person out, and you are not ceremonially saying you are no longer important to me by giving away some of these items.
Right.
You are recognizing that these are just material items, and perhaps for someone who came from a difficult background, this may be a harder task due to the fear of going without, or maybe one day needing a particular item, or something of that nature, or not wanting to go back to the days when you were just scraping by. So there are dynamics there that might be behind your difficulty in being able to part with certain things.
Yeah, you touched on a very pertinent topic this time of year. It's become known as Blue Christmas. Christmas, even though it's the season of light and joy, can be anything but that for folks who are dealing with loss, and not even necessarily recent loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said earlier too, Mark, in the intro, that we've got these memories, and so a lot of times we look back and, when was the last time you've had a conversation where you have kind of reminisced with loved ones about the quote unquote good old days when things were good? But I think at least part of that too is we're putting too much emphasis on our expectations. And this goes back to our last segment. We're expecting too much. We've got these Hallmark movie channel ideas of what our Christmas should look like.
Actually happen.
Especially if you're a Buffalo Bills fan. Come on now. We all know about that movie that's out right now. But again, then that gets wound into the mix too. And so really kind of like what we're talking about today, and some of the tips that I hope that we're going to pass along here in just a second is, how do you keep in control of this process instead of allowing these unfair or unrealistic expectations and your material possessions to actually control you?
We will dive into that momentarily. You're listening to Real Answers. I'm Mark Webster, along with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Today talking about navigating the ghosts of Christmas past, we might call it, not getting too wrapped up in old feelings and old things that link to those feelings. So what are some good ways to attack that if it's an issue?
Well, understanding, again, like we just said, what the dynamics are behind maybe the difficulty you have in doing this is the first step. The second thing is to really look at this as a task that if you do make the effort to deal with it right now, it's going to free up a lot of mental space, if you will, later on, and make future, not only holidays, but moments of times with your family actually be a little more meaningful. For example, considering these possessions that you have and understanding, how do I decide what things to keep, which things not to keep, what should I give away versus what should literally just quite honestly go in the trash can. This might be a task that's a little difficult right now, but it's along the lines of drawing up a will. Okay, that's something that we don't love to do. We don't want to think about these things, or maybe an advanced, a medical advanced directive where we make some medical decisions for ourselves ahead of time. It's not something you'd rather do instead of going out to dinner with friends or playing with your kids, but it is potentially a task that right now will save time and mental anguish later on. So I think it's really worth considering and doing it. And again, this tip that I'm about to give you is maybe not super easy, but it's definitely going to be, I think, very productive. And that is speak with your loved ones that are alive right now and say, hey, you know what? I know you got these things you're going to be passing on, but what are the things that are the most meaningful to you? Is there an heirloom? What are, of your items that you have, what are those heirlooms that really do mean something to you? And you really want to pass those along to your kids. And of course, those are the things you want to hold on to, okay? But also recognize that you cannot, And you should not try to hold on to everything just because an item belonged to a loved one. There are some things you really got to just let go of. And again, maybe some of the things that have monetary value that aren't that important to your loved ones, and they come out and tell you that. So, well, this isn't that important to me, and it has some money, so go ahead and sell it. Let them make the decision too. Then that way it's taking the burden off of you of having to decide and then struggle with the fears that maybe you're dishonoring the other person. Let them help you decide what things to keep and what things not to keep. And then you can use that money, if you wanted to donate to a charity or something of that nature later on that would honor the memory of your loved ones too. So there's ways of dealing with being proactive now that then later will make it easier on you and actually, quite honestly, easier on your kids too. Because remember, you don't want to pass this burden on to your kids either, where you're just accumulating and have to make them decide what to do with it too. Okay. So it really is a good thing to consider doing now. Dive right in, schedule it if you can, deal with it now, talk to your loved ones and let them help you make the decision. And it will save you a lot of time and anguish in the future.
I know as I've gotten older, I find it easier to part with stuff, even stuff that, was in the family, but stuff is stuff when you get right down to it.
Absolutely. And you know what, quite honestly, Mark, if this is causing you significant distress, even just hearing this segment right now, maybe consider talking to somebody about it, mental health professional or a trusted friend or family member, and just work through it together with somebody else. You got to just really remember, you're not throwing away the other person. You're just saying, okay, these are items that might have connection to another person, but there are more meaningful and we'll say more active ways in helping to keep people's memories alive and cherishing those memories, other than having a bunch of items that you may never even look at again, quite honestly. You have them stored away, so you might not even look at those things again.
Yeah. You've been listening to Real Answers, a Wednesday feature of the Family Life Noon Report, where we discuss the issues important to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Thanks again, Chris.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
All right, great show today, guys. It's okay to let go of your stuff. You can download all our Real Answers podcasts online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The system bringing our region the winter weather today is low pressure. That'll be passing across Lake Ontario this afternoon and this evening with more messy winter weather than a hard freeze and lake effect in its wake. For this afternoon, cloudy with snow and rain, a wet snow, but some additional accumulations in the high ground of northwest Pennsylvania and in central New York. Little to nothing elsewhere. Temperatures peaking in the 30s and near 40 with a breeze. Tonight and tomorrow, blustery, much colder, variable cloudiness, flurries, and wind-blown lake snow. Several inches will accumulate in the snowbelt areas east and southeast of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, just a coating to an inch elsewhere. Low temperatures tonight, teens and low 20s. High temperatures tomorrow, 20s to near 30.
Great work at the Weather Center. Thank you, Kevin. Finally at noon, unconventional contraband in the Palmetto State. Check this out. A drone recently delivered steak, crab legs, and marijuana to a prison in South Carolina.
Guards at the Lee Correctional Institution spotted the drop and seized the contraband. The steak and crab legs were still in their grocery store packaging. There were also plastic baggies of pot and 2 cartons of cigarettes. The South Carolina Department of Corrections posted a photo of the loot on social media with the hashtag Contraband Christmas. Flying a drone near a prison in South Carolina can get you 30 days behind bars. Dropping contraband into a prison can get you 10 years.
That's correspondent Michael Wallace, and just like that, we're out of time. That's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, the 10th day of December. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.